It's an ongoing struggle in this industry. Listen, as somebody who's not a comedian and doesn't do the grind and doesn't do it from your level, I think I don't see it from your eyes. I see it from my eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a guy trying to produce and showcase talent in the industry. So I can see that it needs a lot of support. Like star system, words like star systems and just the culture of comedy, and like I'm sure everybody loves comedy. Like everybody loves comedy,
Sure,
but
yeah.
you can take five random people walking the streets of any town, Canada, and I'm like, name me five of the best like Canadian comics. They'll be like, I saw this one guy, yuck yuck.
Hey,
There you are. There I am.
nice.
Sorry. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Uh, Busy, but trying to make something of it all, I guess, as they
That's
say.
good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that you have the You Should Do Comedy podcast
Yeah, this
right
is,
there.
I mean, we can totally get into it, but yeah, this is kind of where I want to record.
Nice.
Sort of a makeshift studio. You're what, Ottawa based?
Yeah, I'm in Ottawa now. That's basically what I'm doing too. I turned this other bedroom into a makeshift studio.
So I used to manage a bar, like a live, like concert hall,
Cool.
uh, up the street from me. And I mean, during the pandemic, they did comedy shows here, and they're still doing a lot of more stuff. But throughout the week, it just never gets used. It's more like an event space.
Oh, okay, cool.
Um, so they have they put some money into the basement. They kind of renovated the lounge. I was thinking about doing a weekly showdown here. But yeah, I kind of like the setup. It's kind of dark and dungy, but with the right lighting, you can kind of get a cool little setup. And I thought, I'd record the podcast here once I'm
Yeah.
up and running. Most of them have been via Zoom because it's just the nature of the beast. But when I get the right setup and everything going, yeah, we'll get guests in and everything.
You do live podcasts. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Toronto's the spot to do live podcasts, especially because you've got a huge base of comedians. But if people don't know, you were a co-host on Inside Jokes, which was
Yeah.
just like a long running like radio show where you supported so many stand-up comedians. I was grateful to be able to come on the show in the first place. But yeah, I want to hear more though about like You Should Do Comedy. We can talk a little bit about Inside Jokes if you want to.
However
Um,
you want to play. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
sure,
let's
sure. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
yeah, of course. So your word for the episode was support. What made you choose support?
Because I think Canadian comedy needs as much of it as it can get. That was kind of the mandate behind Inside Jokes. It sort of is the mandate for the new podcast. It's the mandate I've always seen fitting for it. It's just it's an ongoing struggle in this industry. Listen, as somebody who's not a comedian and doesn't do the grind and doesn't do it from your level, I think I don't see it from your eyes. I see it from my eyes, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a guy trying to produce and showcase talent in the industry. So I can see that it needs a lot of support. Like words like star systems and just the culture of comedy, and like I'm sure everybody loves comedy. Like everybody loves comedy,
Sure,
but
yeah.
you can take five random people walking the streets of any town, Canada, and I'm like, name me five of the best like Canadian comics. They'll be like, I saw this one guy, yuck yucks, and I saw
Or they'll do the
another girl.
classic list. They'll be
Yeah, they
like,
don't have a free. We're not name brands, right?
Jim Carrey, it'll be all just
Sorry,
like,
I'm shaking. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing that bugs me. But something I noticed, and it came really relevant when I was in Montreal this summer covering the festival, covering Just for Laughs. Um, I was with a friend of mine, and she needed I don't know, like a cough syrup or like a Tylenol or something. And we're at their Shoppers Drug Mart, and I go, "What do you notice about the checkout line?" And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Look at the magazines." She's like, "I don't see any." Yeah, you don't recognize a damn soul, nor do you recognize any of the publications
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
Quebec has its own magazines covering their own entertainment with their own stars. You don't
Mhm.
reckon like that doesn't happen. And I think a lot of it, or the rest of Canada, a lot of it has to do with our talent pool and our entertainment is very Americanized. And
Mhm.
that's what I mean by support. Support our own. Get more of our guys and girls and everybody in this industry and not just comedy, just entertainment industry. Get them more recognition, get more stuff greenlit, get more faces on TVs. But I mean, the whole landscape of media has changed. Now it's social media, so many people are doing that themselves.
Yeah,
Hence,
it's true. It's almost
us,
like they missed it's when I say they, I mean like government channels of,
the
upping their
gatekeepers,
own,
if you
the
will.
gatekeepers. Yeah, they kind of missed their chance because now social media is just undeniable, right? Like people on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, they gain fan bases overnight. And that's very much like a solitary process where like you're kind of grinding all alone on this thing. And then maybe if you make some money, you bring on like an editor, but they're not like usually other comedians. That's why I wanted to start this podcast too, is to just like let me get on people I've met over the years. And yeah, a lot of them are comedians, some of them are actors or whatever, but like
Yeah.
just start like building a little multiverse on the Johnny Rogers show of different characters that you can find throughout Canada, because it's like there's for example, I had a PR agency reach out to me and they were kind of being like, hey, we can send you like some of our clients and like you can have them on the show to talk about their projects, whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I was asking, I'm like, why? I don't have that many viewers. Like, why are you picking me? And she's like, you're one of the few like Canadian podcasts that we can like hear back from. Like she's
Hmm.
like, we try to get them on, like CTV or this or that, but like if it doesn't fit like a current narrative that they want to run, or it's not somebody that they want to like push, then they're just not going to respond to the email. Or there might be so many emails that they don't have a chance to respond to any of them. So I'm like,
Yeah.
you and I mean, like, and I say this to every other like podcaster too that I have on here. I'm like, we need a not just comedy community, but a podcasting specific Canadian community where we all can kind of share guests and insights. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Just Chill with Oliver George. He's like
Yep.
another
I have.
Ottawa.
Yeah.
So he was kind of
I've
saying to
heard the
me,
name and the podcast. I haven't. Yeah.
yeah, he has a good podcast. I think he's done like Strombo and like Tommy Chong and like some cool guests. And he was kind of like, oh, he's like, is it bad if we have like the same people on our podcast? And I was like, not at all, because like I'm a fan of Mark Normand. When I see Mark Normand on any podcast, I'm gonna listen because it's gonna be entertaining, right?
Right.
And so we need to kind of build that rapport with Canadians through these repeated guests. Like I would tell
100%.
you, like have Black Zeus on. He's a great guest to have on.
Love
If
Black Zeus. He's been on Inside Jokes, but yeah,
yeah,
he's
we
an
need to
awesome
do more
guest.
of that. Yeah.
That's the currency, or the narrative has no longer become your credits or your resume. The currency is now followers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's your algorithm like? What are the metrics like on your social media? How many clicks are you getting? Like that's the new kind of Nielsen ratings, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, for real.
Yeah. If people
And
know what Nielsen ratings are.
yeah,
Remember what those were?
yeah. I remember that would just like brutalize some people. Like I think I heard Rogan talking about this once about like how the producer or somebody would always come in with like a number on his shirt, and that number was like where they ranked in the Nielsen ratings, basically, or the ratings that
Oh,
they would get back. And so they'd see like a huge number and they'd be like, oh God, we're getting canceled. Like it's just like end of the world. They're like, oh God, 136. What the hell?
get your digits up. You got to get your digits up.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it would have been brutal just making that shirt toning on. They're not gonna like this one for sure.
Oh man.
What are
But
your
yeah,
thoughts? Because we are sort of an independent industry right now in podcasting, right?
very much. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on kind of like the writer's strike and like everything that's going on with that world? Do you think that like kind of unionizing helped them to a certain point, but then it kind of worked against their interests, or do you think it's still like on the table that they could win in this? Because I think AI is going to be almost too undeniable for these
That's the oh
fat
god.
studio heads to just like
It's
start
it,
cutting
it
people.
it's not the first time it happened, because it happened once when the surge of VHS came,
Sure.
and the whole VHS versus Laserdisc, and VHS went out. Then it was the whole surge of Blu-ray versus
DVDs.
DVD and
Yeah, yeah.
DVD, and then all that stuff. So it just seems to be happening in any new form and advancement of technology when it comes to media and entertainment. This is going to happen. They're going to come to a stronghold now with streaming services and AI. I mean, it's a dogfight that they're in it right now. How I see it unfolding, I mean, it's someone's going to cave, and it ain't going to be corporations. I can tell you that right now. They're just too damn
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah,
They're too damn
100%.
powerful. I mean, then it becomes a quality versus quantity sort of conversation because yeah, you can put as much reality TV or all that doesn't really need that much focus on writing, but I
Hmm.
mean, everybody gets that on their phone, and you can put as much. I mean, I see that they're launching new game shows for the fall season and stuff that doesn't really take a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
thought
yeah.
process. But then, what suffers in the end? I mean, uh, film. It was hard enough to get people to go back into the theaters. Now it's hard enough to get people to start making movies.
Crazy.
So you can't deny the creativity of the human mind, and I don't care how much smarts it takes to create AI of that magnitude because it's two different types of creativity. Yeah, you can create something that can do all that algorithm stuff and spit out something, but human life experience is something that everybody can relate to, and a machine can't pump that out.
Yeah, and it can't like hold on to nuances of a certain period and like deep-seated references and knowing when to like I guess you could try to calculate that down to it, but just like the the fact that we don't know really where our ideas come from has to set us apart from a machine, right? Like this idea of like consciousness and the because I've had ideas before, but I just haven't had the means to complete the idea. Like this
Right.
happened to me like not that long ago. I had a great idea for a sketch, and I was like, I would do this sketch, but I would need X, Y, and Z to make it like perfect because I'm not going to do it unless it's like exactly the way I want it. 2 weeks later, I see somebody, they made the exact same sketch. And I'm like, was that a moment? And it was great. Like, it was exactly what I would have done with it. And I was like, that's amazing. Somebody already made it. So it's almost like ideas just kind of like hit everyone at once. And then whoever can act on that idea at the same time just does it, you know?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it's exactly it. And another thing with AI, I mean, I don't know if it's ever happened to you. You've ever been driving and you're trying to send a text out. I don't know how update your car is, but on the newer cars, you can sort of like talk to Siri via your dashboard and like just tell them this, and then she'll spit out what you want to see, and you're like, yeah, okay, send. But
yeah,
then
like
if
a
you really
guess.
were to write the text using whatever kind of spacing it out how you want, and then the other person receiving it and knowing your tone, they're going to get it a whole different way. Or someone
Yeah.
reading your text versus you know the Kane and Peele did a great bit on it where two people are texting each other, but they're both seeing it from a different point of
Oh
view,
yeah, yeah, I
a
remember that
different
sketch.
perspective. You can't define tone in AI. You can't define it's
No,
blackwards on a
yeah,
screen.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just blackwards on a screen. An actor or somebody has to bring it to life with pitch and tone and pauses and everything. So
Yeah. The part
it's
that
gonna
scares me though is that the idea that they want to like do facial scans of people, pay them once and be able to use their face on any actor in perpetuity. You know what I mean? Like you'll always
yeah.
have a
What is it?
new
Deep fake? It's
Mel
called.
Gibson. Yeah, it's like a deep fake, but it's
Yeah,
really good. Like there's a guy on TikTok that does like Tom Cruise videos
yeah,
and
I've
it
seen
looks
him.
identical to Tom Cruise. And this is just some guy. You know what I mean? Like what how
But how
much
does this guy get away with it without Tom Cruise suing him?
I don't know, or the Church of Scientology on his ass.
Really?
Like,
Like, I mean, yeah. I
like
mean, anybody could just like, that's me. How can you do that? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
it's an ongoing struggle.
scary, man. And it feels like it came so fast. I mean, like any technology, I guess, comes fast because we don't expect it. But like a year and a half ago, never heard of ChatGPT. Now it's
No,
like replacing jobs, you know?
but they did give you like, I remember like your iPhone or your smartphone was like facial recognition to unlock your screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're
a little
like
bit like that.
priming.
Yeah, I always kind of wondered if that was sort of the entertainment. Like, you notice how there's always like alien movies coming out every once in a while, or disaster movies
We're
coming
on
out
the
once in a
same
while.
wavelength. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
are they
yeah.
just kind of prepping us so when it does happen? I
I
mean,
think that's what the alien stuff was. So like they put out that newspaper release that was like the Pentagon like is saying that they're going to release these hidden UFO documents and everyone's like whoa and then nothing really happened and
right.
then they're like the more UFO sightings whoa here's like a radar footage of it and then randomly it was like the Mexican government showed a bunch of people like an alien that's 1,500 years old, and you're like, all right,
And
like
nobody gave a shit. And everyone
no
was just
one
like, yeah, okay,
cared.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. Nobody cared. I don't know how to,
uh,
whatever. I mean, that's the kind of the ongoing, they're kind of, yeah, been prepping
yeah,
us. Like, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. November 20. I wasn't even born, but I still know the
still
date.
don't know.
Yeah. And no one's ever released the records. But if the government came out and said, yeah, we shot Kennedy dead in his face, everybody would
Yeah,
be like, yeah, we knew.
yeah,
We
yeah,
always
yeah.
known
We
this. Nobody would
assumed.
care.
Yeah,
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 we just did.
yeah.
We knew it all along. Thank you. But,
It's so
that's,
crazy.
yeah,
It's
that's,
crazy that like they can do stuff that's just so obvious, and then when people call them on it, they just kind of like, I don't know. Like they don't really ever have a response. They're just kind of like talk about something. Like I saw Trudeau. This is totally aside. Like it's just
yeah.
about politicians never answering a question, but they asked Trudeau like because he's like on building affordable housing. Like we're really working on building affordable housing, and great question from the reporter. This is good journalism. She was like, "What do you consider affordable?" And he
What was the
actually
answer?
he didn't answer it.
Of course he didn't answer it. No, no,
He
no politician would.
he said, "Well, we're working hard. We're fighting for Canadians. We're going to, just keep building these homes, and they'll be done in no time. Thank you. Next question."
Yeah. Every politician went to like a spin doctor class. It's just like,
It's
say what
crazy.
you got to say just to get the hell out of there and don't answer anything affirmatively.
Yeah, like I just don't get why they can't level with it. Like adults can't level with other adults and be like, look, that's a really good question. Obviously, I'd have to like talk to the people that are, going to be renting these out or that are going to like the landowners, and maybe we'll do something that's like per square footage based on how close it is to this or that, and we'll come up with a good plan, but we're going to work on it. I can't give you an exact number. I'm sorry. Do you know what I mean? Like, just say that you couldn't give the answer instead of talking around the answer and then being like, all right, that was sufficient.
Well, there's business politics and then there's actual politics,
It's
and
crazy.
and some people just excel at one and just fucking just become bullshit artists at the other. And I don't know how to explain it to everybody, but I mean, like, yeah, they just keep running around in circles trying to find something or other, and just to get themselves out
Yeah.
of the hole they dug them in. Because once you say it, they'll hang you on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? Like, American politics wise, I think like RFK is probably the only one who seems like an actual good candidate, but he's a Democrat, so he can't really can't. He's kind of like campaigning for nothing because if they just run Joe Biden again, then you know,
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work on
yeah,
the
yeah. It's
Democratic
like,
side. I mean, I know that everyone, well, Trump especially, is fighting for the Republican side, but well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, everybody gets so enamored by that because, again, look at their party system versus our party system again, and it's all about people and being invested and certain personalities that are always there
oh, it's
accumulating the
all
airtime.
personality.
Yeah.
That's
And
yeah,
again,
yeah,
it's Canadians get overpowered by American politics because of their
yeah,
star system. And it's like, we don't even give a shit on our
yeah,
politics, but
yeah,
yet somehow we always get wrapped up into theirs. So,
yeah. My friend was in Greece recently, and he was telling me that like because he was born there, but his friends there were like asking him questions like, "Oh, you're from Canada. Did you go? Have you been to the CN Tower?" And he was like, "No, like I've never gone to the CN Tower. Like he's been to Toronto a couple times, right? They just think it's like all so close."
right.
And they started telling him like facts about the CN Tower, and he's like, "What? Why don't I know this? Like I lived in Canada most of my life. How do you know more about my country?"
Well,
But
it
that's usually
was the
how it
tallest.
goes.
It was the tallest for a while, and then it was a building in Dubai that kind of now it's like the
Yeah, yeah.
third tallest. It keeps going
It's a weird obsession
every year.
humans
The
have,
CN
eh?
Tower just keeps getting outreached. Yeah.
Get knocked down a peg.
Yeah.
How's how was I know I hate to like rehash things, but I always find it so interesting. Like, how was the pandemic for you in Toronto? Because I left.
Where did you go for your pandemic?
I left. I came to Ottawa. I was like, I'm leaving this. The city was
Oh,
turning
that's when
into
you moved out of Toronto, is
Gotham.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
I was
you
just
left.
like, I see this going downhill pretty bad, and it's like, just got out.
Um, my pandemic, or what we used to call it on Inside Jokes, the pandy. My pandy.
Pandy.
I mean, make of it what you could. It was kind of, I was afraid to turn on the TV. So that's one thing. And then it's just like, why? Why is everyone like, what is it? Like, again, tell me what this is, and maybe I can cope with it better. But they couldn't give it to you in, again, straight answers. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, a lot of it at home, a lot of it kind of scratching my head. I think it took a month, maybe even less, couple weeks for us to get back on air. And then we started recording from home. For inside jokes is what I was saying, for a radio show, because radio itself, I mean, it was just the bare minimum going into our network. And then once they kind of opened it up to kind of outside of the regularly scheduled program, their weekend program, their more specialty shows, they're like, yeah, but and Zoom was a thing, but it wasn't our thing, I guess, for a while. I mean, I had other people I was working with, so it was via phone. We did our show, and then it was kind of the only thing, it was the highlight of my week is recording the show, and then
Yeah, I was
maybe
gonna
editing in
say.
it and getting it ready to go, and then we were on the weekend, so it was kind of getting everything geared up for that. Once we went to Zoom, and then we kind of that's where we stayed till our final day. Well, our last episode was in studio, but yeah, I mean, it was rolling with the punches when it came to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Finding out one thing from the next, and what was allowed or not allowed, and just how everybody was kind of like adjusting to what the rules were. But then people were sort of fighting the rules, and then what side of the fence did you lay on with that? And then it was one thing after another. So, yeah, as a producer myself, and that's kind of embedded in my brain. I always try to keep moving, keep thinking of new creative things to do. I remember when they had the bubble aspect. Hey, hang out with your
Yeah, that
bubble.
was
I started
interesting.
doing I started doing dinner parties at my house. I'm a
Nice.
I'm a big cook. I'm a fan of the cooking, as they say. So I liked cooking. So I would host little dinner parties. Bring your bubble of friends over, and I'll cook you a little dinner. Kind of like going out to a restaurant, but you can't because the restaurants are closed. So
Yeah, yeah.
I kind of did that for a while. It was just one of those things you just kind of had to like keep swinging and see see what's stuck. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what's sticking. So something to keep my brain active, something to keep my brain moving, and not think about all the negativity.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, is not trying your best to not look at the news every 2 seconds and just see like a number that was going to make you go, oh God, like how many new cases? Like Jesus Christ, what's closed now? Oh
Yeah,
God.
it's like
Like
the
just,
fucking Grim Keeper should have hosted the six. Good evening at 6 o'clock.
yeah, yeah,
Here's who's dead. And he has a list, and
yeah.
he just
Yeah,
reads them
yeah.
off.
Just reads off the names as the lower
Yeah, just
third
come out
goes
with a
by.
cloak and a sickle, and he's just like, "Good evening at 6 o'clock. Here's who's dead." Thanks. All right.
COVID kills another 100,000. Oh
Yeah,
my God. Yeah, what a fucking just weird. It feels like a fever dream at this point. I feel like we've been out of it long enough that it's just like, did
it's
that
been 3 years,
happen?
but it doesn't feel like
I
it's
don't
three
know.
years. It just feels like, oh, it was last year, wasn't it? No.
I've been saying we should take that back. Like it's whatever your age is, whatever birthday you're turning, just minus a year. You
Hey, I
know?
mean, I do remember my first, I guess, COVID birthday, as they call it. It
Yeah.
was literally me with a burger that I ordered from Uber Eats and a
Oh,
fucking candle sticking right in the middle of it, and I was just like,
oh my
"What?
God.
What do you want me to do?"
Uber Eats probably loved the pandemic. I bet they
Oh,
made lots of money during that
corporations,
period.
corporations thrived. I remember all that whole big business, little business, like
Yeah.
independent businesses can't be open, but if you're Walmart, go right ahead.
Yeah,
It
essential and
was
non-essential, which is
yeah, essential and non-essential.
the most
Yeah.
degrading like label is to be labeled non-essential.
I'm an essential service. You're not an essential service. Oh, okay. That's
Oh,
that's part of our vernacular now.
good
Good.
to know. I'm
What
glad I
about my
worked all
living?
the
What
way.
about my job? What about
Yeah,
my
yeah. What happens there, folks?
yeah?
Oh my God. I want to talk to you about inside jokes and like how you got started with it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And like what that last show kind of felt like. I would think that would be a good like to
Where do you
kind
want
of
to start? Do you want to go Tarantino and start from the end to the beginning, or do you want to?
whatever you like. I'll let your producer brain decide. I just want the people to get to know you a little bit more and your background.
Okay, well, let's if they want to get to know me a little bit more of my background, it started back Second City many moons ago. I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago, maybe. I met Sandra Carusi. I don't know if that name rings a bell,
Yep.
but Sandra Carusi was a media personality in radio. She worked for a Toronto-based radio station, and then she moved over to our network, which was AM 640 or 640 Toronto, rebranded. But she was always kind of she hosted a couple morning shows. She was always, again, a creative process. one that always was thinking of things to do. I met her in Second City, and we immediately clicked. She was hilarious. She was a former stand-up comic, so she did the art. She got out of it. Obviously, marriage, parenting, it kind of takes you away from the stage. She took the more secure job in radio, so she was doing on-air stuff. She from there moved into sales. So that was her life. And when we met in Second City, it was like we got each other's funny. We would, just hang out in the back of the class like two stupid kids would, and then you'd always go for drinks after your classes are done. And we just always had a bond. We always had a friendship. Many moons after that, we both went through our struggles. I'm a cancer survivor twice, and so
Wow.
is Sandra. Sandra was a 5-time, I think it was. She was
Wow.
battled breast cancer, yeah, on again, off again, and it was a struggle for her. But we both kind of split off, did our own separate things, and I got into hospitality. I was in the restaurant industry, and I did that for a good 20 years. And on one of my days off, I just ran into her in a parking lot. She's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm here. I just was about to grab groceries at the supermarket." She's like, "I'm recording a podcast across the street. Come check it out." I'm like,
Hey.
"What? What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm doing a comedy podcast with comedians and stuff like that. Come check it out." And I'm like, "Okay." And we rehashed our love for comedy and everything. And she was kind of telling me about it on the walk up the stairs. And it literally, she came out of her treatment and she kind of wanted to get back into an industry that she loved, which was stand up, which was comedy.
Yeah.
Um, she was still going through it at the time. I didn't even know it, but she was wearing a wig and she was going through treatments. And I'm like, good for her, man. What a go getter. And then we sat there in a room, in this little recording studio. I still remember where it is. Um, and she had on her podcast, comedian Jay Brown. I don't know if that name rings a bell, from Yuck Yucks.
I don't know. I
Jay
might have
Brown
met him.
and Mark Breslin. Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, that name rings a
Owner of
bell.
Yuck Yucks.
For
And I'm like,
sure.
holy shit, hey, what's going on? And she's like, yeah. And they just listen. I just listened to this interview and they were going back and forth and kind of got my glimpse onto what the hell podcasting was. And she took a couple of those episodes and she's like, can you do me a favor? I was like, what? I'm like, can you listen to the episodes? And like, she gave me a link and then like, I'll put them on a SoundCloud for you. Listen to them, kind of, think what the funny parts are. What can I use? And let me know. And she's like, timestamp it for me. I'm like, what does that mean? Timestamp it. And she's like, well, when you think something funny starts, mark the time. And then when you think the bit ends, mark the end time. And that's a timestamp. Give me the start and the end of it. And there you go. She was kind of prepping me and I didn't know it, but it was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
terminology I was learning. I'm like, okay, I think this was funny in the interview. I thought that was funny in the interview. And this was kind of cool. And I did the whole thing. I did 3 episodes.
Wow.
What she was doing was creating a sizzle reel. And she put all the best of clips, all the funny clips,
Uh,
and she pitched it to her network. In return, the network loved the idea of putting a comedian or kind of comedian of Sandra Carusi hosting a comedy talk show showcasing Canadian comedy
yeah.
on Canadian talk radio.
Couldn't be
Brilliant.
a better fit.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
amazing. I was up. But she told me, she's like, Vince, out of every comic that wanted to work with me, nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted to do the
wow.
work. Nobody wanted to do time stamping. Everybody wanted to be on mic with me. Everybody just wants to be funny. And nobody wanted to do the legwork in producing the show. You did 3 episodes. I only asked you to do 1. And I'm just like, well, I thought it was really cool. And I like what you're doing. She's like, okay, you're my producer. I'm like, producer for what? She's like, I just pitched this as a radio show and we're going to go on air. I'm like, what? And it was all like, I didn't know what the hell was going on. She brought me into the network. It was my first time kind of taking in radio
So
firsthand.
you went from like hospitality,
No, no, no. I was still
right?
doing hospitality.
Okay,
I
you're
was just
still
like,
doing hospitality. Yeah,
like on
yeah,
my day off,
yeah.
essentially, I would always have
You
the
would go
same sort of
in.
day off.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, we'll film we'll record on Tuesdays. And she's like, what do you like, Monday nights or Sunday nights? And I always remember the radio show, the Sunday Night Funnies with Rick Hodge on Chum FM, which wasn't a talk show, what we were doing, but it was comedy clips. And I would listen to it every night, Sunday night before I go to work in the morning or whatever. And I thought, what a cool show. It was like, it reminded me of like the Sunday Night Sex Show with Sue and all these cool little radio shows that were on Sunday nights, whether you're coming
Yeah.
back from the cottage or you're prepping, the week ahead, or you're folding laundry for tomorrow or getting everything ready for your Monday morning, or you're winding down your weekend and you had the radio on. For me, it was
Yeah.
always the Sunday Night Funnies with Rick Hodge. So I said, Sunday nights. Let's do Sunday nights. Let's have the show air Sunday nights. She's like, cool. I like the name Inside Jokes. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's a cool name. Little did I know, and there's like a million inside joke podcasts. Andrew Schultz, who is a very famous comedian, has a podcast called Inside Jokes.
Yeah. I think Kevin Hart even started one too later
well,
on.
they were in a bit of a debate over that.
Yeah.
And then,
they went
like,
back
I don't
and
think
forth.
Andrew Schultz uses the name anymore. He has his Flagrant podcast.
Yeah.
It just sits there, dormant. But that's the name we went with. She's like, yeah, you're going to be my producer. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. She's like, don't worry, we'll pick it up. I'm like, okay. And we shot in the old CFNY studios, the Edge 102.1. We did our first kind of trial run in a little small studio. I still remember our guests, Andrew Johnston, the late great Tim Steves, and Dini DeMacos. Those were kind of the guests. I was in the producer room, so I was behind the glass, and Sandra hosted, and we put together a show. And then she's like, do you know how to work social media? I'm like, okay, sure. And like, that was all coming into, like, Instagram was the hot thing. Facebook was still vibrant, as they will. And we ran with it. And that was 8 years later.
I love that too. Like, just starting from her just wanting to do this thing so bad. And then, like, I remember when I came to Toronto and I was seeing like all the big comics going on the show, to me, it was like this, like, big deal. Like, you gotta get on Inside Jokes. You know what I mean? So it's just so cool to see it build from just her having the comics on that she knows to now it's this like big show that like every comic wants to do. They consider it like a credit if they've been on it, you know?
That was the one thing I was going to mention. What
Yeah.
Inside Jokes was, because we were affiliated with media, a network, and
Yeah.
and our network streamed Canada wide. So you got us in Vancouver and Alberta, and
Amazing.
the only place it didn't happen was Quebec. There was no global news radio at the time in Quebec. But we still had Quebec comics on. We still showcase Quebec comedy. You just stream it online. What it did was it gave comics a credit. And I've written many letters that it was a media credit. If you were on Inside Jokes, you immediately got a media credit. Anybody wanting to go to the States, anybody wanting to pitch for a network spot or any sort of publicity, I would give them that media credit. I've written many letters for many comics trying to get a visa or stuff like that, how they were such a great contributor and we loved having them on. And yeah, I don't know how many networks do that for other comics. And again, we're trying to showcase our talent here. So I lived in that world of comedy, but there's similar stories with actors trying to do the same thing and music artists trying to do the same thing. But that's why I loved Inside Jokes, man. It showcased what we have going on right here in this country. And it gave artists a credit, man. It was a sense of validity. We validate you. This is on like
that's
regular
a huge
radio.
word for it. Yeah. It's a validation thing, right? Like,
right.
it's like,
no one else is
something.
promoting these shows. And there's so many great shows happening either in Toronto or in Vancouver where you can stream us or Edmonton, like across the board. Yeah. So that's the one thing I loved about the show. And once we finally found our rhythm, and it was that first Just for Laughs that we went to in Montreal, when it was like, wow, my eyes just like, wow, holy. Yeah, I was.
Who's the first guest that you had on where you were like a little starstruck?
Well, when we had Russell Peters came in to do an in-studio appearance, and we literally gave him the hour, and yeah, that was kind of like. But I known Russ also, but we kind of have the same mutual group of friends, so it was kind of like hey, he's agreed to do this. I'm like, holy crap, right?
Cool.
When we went to Montreal, one of the first interviews we had was Bruce Hills. I mean, we're just like. But Sandra's also got the gift of gab. So what she did was she worked with Global News TV in Montreal. So we had a camera crew already.
Oh,
so
amazing.
when you got a camera crew going on the evening news,
yeah,
news, and you're walking around the hotel lobby, I'm like, hey, who's this
makes
guy?
it easy to call people over.
It makes it easy to grab anybody you want. Like, who doesn't want to be on TV? So that was kind of a big thing. But I mean, it's not, the nature of the guest, because I mean, we've had Kevin Hart, Red Carpet, we've had some great phone-in interviews with like Trevor Noah, but it's pairing those with a Frank Spadone or an Angelo Sarukis or a Steph Tolev at the time, who wasn't as big as she was now, but was on very early episodes of Inside Jokes, and Graham Kay or any pairing that big name, and then the back half of the episode is also a great Canadian artist you can
Yeah,
listen to as
yeah.
well. So it kind of gave everybody that little bit of a push. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's so many great moments I love about
It's
that show.
smart to pair that for sure.
Yeah,
What was the last episode like for you? Did it feel like you guys had kind of fulfilled the mission that, Sandra wanted to do with that show? Was it like a bittersweet thing? Like
it
what
was bittersweet. I mean, Sandra, bless her heart, passed away in 2018. Um, it was hard for a lot of people. I kind of stepped away from the show that last year before she died.
mm,
So August of 2018 is when she passed. I kind of came back into the fold after that, and I kind of took it by the reins. 2019 great, 2020 not so great. Obviously, we're into the pandemic years from that, but still keeping the show afloat. And then I just got back in producing mode and trying to make the best show that I know she would love, and going after great guests, and me just going hard after. If I wanted that guest, God damn it, I'm getting that guest, or
yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
whatever I can to get them in. And I was going after, like, and still have great relationships with a lot of great PR agencies. Just for Laughs, a great client of ours, Netflix, Amazon. So getting a chance to work with them and bringing on talent that they wanted to promote, again, Canadian radio. So
Mm-hmm.
that was all good for me. But gearing up to the last sort of episode, and right up to the last episode, we were still showcasing, like, the Danforth Comedy Festival was happening, and, like,
Yeah.
literally the next week was our last show. So
Wow.
um we wanted to I guess end off with our favorites over the years. So the guests that we've kind of always had on, and yeah, so it was like I was Frank Spadone, Jean Paul, Mark Anthony Synagoga, Crystal Ferrier, and Keith Pedro.
Killers
That was
Row.
yeah, that was our lineup. That was our
Look
lineup.
up all of those people if you're listening
Yeah,
to this
Frank
because
Spadone,
they're
Jean Paul. Frank
incredible.
Spadone killing it. He's in LA right now doing a couple shows. Jean Paul killing it on breakfast television. Keith Pedro did a West Coast swing last year, and California loves that guy.
It's unstoppable. He's on Roast
Crystal
Battle
Ferrier,
too.
yeah, on Roast Battle. Crystal Ferrier on Roast Battle. Mark Anthony Synagoga is blown up on social media. His Doug Ford impersonations, and
Yeah,
working with
yeah.
guys like Nima Nas and Austin Alexander. But those guys have always supported us over the years, so it was only fitting that we'd had them on. Oh, and Mark Anthony out of Nova Scotia,
Mm.
he came on as well. He worked in the building at one point, so he was always our go-to. But he kind of called in and kind of, again, we just shared memories, kind of a farewell, a send off. Myself and Dean Young, my host, kind of gave it its proper due, as we give it all the stand up puns. We're getting the light. We got to wrap it
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
All
yeah.
that stuff. So our last show, and that was it. And it forever will live online. As we know, our network won't take down any of the episodes. They will live forever there. So we have their promise, their
That's
word,
great.
that they can always live on. But yeah, we had to kind of close that chapter.
Wow. Now, how did you come up with the name You Should Do Comedy?
Everybody keeps telling, like, what do you, as soon as you end something, then everyone, what's the next move? What's the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
move?
yeah.
So I was in Montreal again just this past year. So everybody got word, once you make the announcement, everyone gets word. And you're closing Inside Jokes, and Jen Jokes is coming to a wrap. What's the next move? What are you going to do? What are you going to, you should do a podcast. You should do a pod. Everyone's like, do a pod. Everyone's doing podcasts. You should do a
Yeah,
pod.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was literally going to call this, you should do a podcast,
You should do a
because that's what everybody
podcast.
was telling me. But I'm like, do I want to be the 1,000,001 comedy podcast? But that's the nature of the beast. Everybody is doing podcasts. There are
Mhm.
podcasts to what fast food franchise has the best ketchup packets. So it could be very niche, your
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, of course.
And then it's like, okay, if I do a podcast, what is it going to be about? Okay, well, initially my pitch is I know comedy. I'm not a comedian, but I know it.
Mhm.
I know the art form. I know it backwards. I know it forwards. I can tell you,
You can get the timestamps.
yeah, I can get timestamps. I know the exact moment in time is when I first fell in love with the art form. But when my eyes, like, I could tell you stories of, watching Bugs Bunny to John Ritter. Three's Company was my show.
I love that
To
show.
hearing, yeah, to hearing Eddie Murphy say all the dirty words on Delirious, and sneaking out of my bed to see what my brother and sister were laughing at downstairs, and peeking through the railing to watch that. But my first sort of appreciation for the the art form of comedy was a comic named Richard Jenny.
Mm.
I watched a special when I was 13 called Platypus Man, and it was on like HBO or something like that. We had like satellite TV, and I was like, wow. And I loved it. So me and yeah, I'm always the funny guy. I wanted to be funny. I never had any aspirations of doing stand up. I found it easier sketch writing, hence me
Mm.
taking Second City. I just came naturally to me. I could kind of come up with that, and it became more of a conversational. I was more conversationally funny. Say something, and
Mm.
I'll come right out back here with some sarcasm, which is a second language of mine. But that's naturally the area I live. So, yeah, I get along with a lot of comics, being that that's my sort of comedy forte.
Yeah.
That being said, I have a lot of friends who also think the same way of me. So this podcast was initially going to be me and a couple friends going, "Hey, we should do comedy," but
Yeah.
we never
Yeah.
do. But it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just
You
our
never
thing.
actually do it.
We never actually do comedy, but we should do comedy, right? And as soon as I mentioned that, yeah, we'll do a podcast, and like, whoa, everybody's like, oh, we're gonna be on the internet. I'm like, mm-mm. And they immediately back away, and that's when I
Yeah.
know, okay, they're there, and I'm like just a bit above them. So I'm like, where else can I do? What else can I? How can I pitch this? How can I kind of give it the legs it needs to? And I go back to inside jokes, and that was a showcase for Canadian comics. So as much as this podcast will showcase Canadian comics, and it's kind of an origin of how things started to how things are going to where you want to end. I don't want to keep it just to stand-up comics. I want to open the door to everyone in media.
Yeah.
Media personalities, Canadian personalities. People, listen, if you're on TV for one reason or another, or you're a host, or you produce a morning show, or you're on radio, on
Mm.
morning radio, or you're on morning television, you're entertaining at some point, and you have to entertain your masses. So you gotta have some sense of comedy.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
thought if I could tap into that world and bring them on, like, hey, I think you're funny. Have you ever thought of maybe you should do comedy? Maybe that might open up and get a little more eyes on the industry that I love, which is
Yeah.
Canadian comedy. So starting a podcast, not just for comics, but showcasing more comics. I would love to take this and move it from the podcast forum into live shows where you take that media personality, you take that somebody that everybody sort of recognize, you get them on the pod, and I pose the question, anybody ever told you should do comedy?
And
And
then they
have
go off
them,
to the right.
yeah, you go up to the, and then you
It's like
have them.
reverse Johnny Carson.
Well, yeah, I would love that.
That'd be
But me as the
great.
producer
Yeah.
would then take whatever that media figure is and produce a comedy show around them.
Oh, that's
They would
great.
act as host, and I would book comics around their kind of brand, I guess. They're whoever they are, if they work predominantly, a squeaky clean image online or on TV or whatever there is, I'll book a clean show. If they're ready to, mix it up a bit and explore what comedy is all about, I get a little more comics that are a little more adventurous. And it gets more eyes on the industry the
Mm-hmm.
way I know how, by producing either a podcast or a show, but in a way that's gonna get more people engaged in our industry.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that, man. Now
yeah.
there's a question that I ask everyone on this podcast towards the
Oh,
end is if you could make a phone call to your 15-year-old self, give him a piece of advice based on what you know now, knowing it won't affect your current timeline, what do you say?
how? Any advice I give myself at 15 will affect my current timeline.
No, it's a
Uh,
different world. It's a different timeline.
Invest in Apple? I don't know. Like, what would I tell
Do you have
myself?
Apple there?
Yeah, you have apples, invest in that company. No, what would I give? What would be the advice I would give my 15-year-old self? Um, Easy does it. Don't rush it. Enjoy the moments, and in time, it'll all make sense. That's the best I can kind of give myself. As someone whose brain never really goes on stop, the hamster's always on the wheel.
Yeah,
I tell myself to just slow down, enjoy it, and in time, it'll all make sense.
I love that. Sage advice.
Yeah, and invest in Apple.
Yeah. I love getting different people's responses on that. Like
Yeah.
my girlfriend was on episode 100 and she was like, I wore this sweater at 15 and I just realized that pale yellow wasn't my color. So I would tell her that pale yellow isn't her color.
All
I'm like,
right,
that's
good to
so
know.
specific to
How married to
you.
the color yellow was she? How much
I
yellow did she
guess
wear in
she
15?
really thought it was her thing. I don't know. Like she was going for a whole
So when she
yellow
turned
thing.
14, she's like, this is my year, yellow.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything
yeah.
is going to be yellow.
So
It was
random. But I was
Pokemon
like,
before Pokemon.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, for real. Oh shit. So I want to shout out your social medias here so that people can go follow you. It's at you should do comedy.
Yeah, that's us.
Follow that one and then follow your personal one too, Big Vinny Styles.
Big Vinny Styles. That's a
I'll
name that
put
stuck from high school, I think. I'm just out of high school.
How did you
Don't ever
get
call
that
me
name?
Vinny, but if you want to call me Big Vinny Styles, go right ahead. But the name Vinny absolutely repulses me. Oh, I
Why
can't.
does that repulse you?
It just it because it's
It's
got
too
that Guido.
Italian.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's too
yeah, yeah.
Italian, that too Guido-esque New York. Yo, Vinny. And but if you want to call me Big Vinny Styles, go right ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a few people that can get away with Vinny because I know they're not calling me that by it being my actual name. They're doing it out of spite or whatever, or just trying to be funny. But yeah, yeah, Vince is fine.
Yeah. So you hear that, folks? Just call him Vince.
Just
Unless you're
call him
saying
Vince.
Big Vinny
Yeah.
Styles. You got to say it
Big
all,
Vinny Styles. Yeah,
all
but your
together.
social media says Vinny Styles. It says Big Vinny Styles. You want to call me Big Vinny? It's like if you want to be being called King George,
Yeah.
but your name's
If you're
George.
gonna go Guido, you might as well go full Guido, right?
Well, there you go. Go full Guido. Don't go full Guido.
Don't go
That's
full
another piece
Guido.
of advice I give my
Yeah.
15-year-old. No, don't ever go full Guido. Something I'm
Put the
thankful I
shoe
never did.
polish down, sir. It doesn't go in your hair. Do you have anything
um,
like your podcast? Is that just available on all streaming
it'll be on all streaming
platforms?
platforms. Yeah.
When? Oh yeah, when does it come out? Is it out?
Well, I kind of got some episodes right now gonna come out this week.
Nice.
Just for laughs. So they're kind enough to keep on giving me some talent. So we're showcasing the festival, but probably in a month or so, when I get the studio all set up, we got guests in here. We'll do a full proper launch, but some
Oh yeah.
audio for JFL will be out this week. Yeah, festival starts on the 21st of September. So we'll get some episodes out audio only, but listen to the tracks. Some
Yeah,
great
for
comics that they're
sure.
giving us. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
It's amazing, man. I'm so happy to see that you're starting this new chapter of your life, and I think it's going to be huge.
Well, let's hope. I mean, that's the
Carried
game plan
over.
for everybody. Huge,
Yeah,
huge.
it's
Gonna be
going to be
huge.
huge.
But like I said, yeah, as much as I'm supporting you and you can support me, we need to all support each other.
Yeah,
Get
man.
out there, give some love, show some love to some Canadian artists. Comedy, like I said, everybody loves to laugh, but let's make some names, household names, and let's get some people, the views, the clicks, the loves, the likes, all that they all need. So yeah, support one another, support Canadian comedy.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. Hit
Awesome.
that subscribe button, everybody. That's how you support this show. If you're listening on iTunes, make sure you drop us a 5-star review. Always appreciate that. Vince, any final words for the people?
Oh God, you're leaving me with this task. Uh, be you, be funny, be who you got to be. And if somebody ever tells you, yeah, you know what, you should do comedy.
That's it, everybody. Good night.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.